In business today, my friends, here is the cold hard truth. A mediocre idea with excellent execution often beats out a brilliant idea which never leaves the boardroom or the notebook. And the numbers back it up. According to a study from Instagram, while about 6% of Americans own a business, fewer than 1% of those business owners ever reach $1 million in revenue. And according to a 2025 analysis from Elite Daily, reporting that 83% of Americans believe that they have an invention idea. An estimated 97% of those people freely admit that they never go past the initial stages because of a lack of execution. That's why I'm so pleased to present to you this conversation I had with my friend Owen Barrett. He is a serial clean tech and sustainability entrepreneur on a mission to boost multifamily real estate NOI with outside solo, pragmatic business, and stubborn about impact. He's prepared to share the unfiltered story behind his path to entrepreneurship. He started a paper route at the tender age of 12. He nearly became homeless while chasing the dream of his first startup, and he lived on food stamps for over a year, but he rebounded because before the age of 30, he had built and sold his first company that made him financially free, including a stretch building while he was living in an RV with his family. He also breaks down his contrarian playbook and tells you why he believes ideas are worthless in business without solid execution and speed. He also detailed how he dealt with the pain of rejection after being rejected by 49 venture capitalists after pitching to over 50 of them, and what it really takes to scale a business when perfection is the enemy. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. If you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, my friend, and I'm super excited to learn about your journey in entrepreneurship. It's great to see you, my friend, and happy Monday to you.
Yeah, happy Monday to you too.
Absolutely. No. Oh, and I know that you're someone who believes that in business, ideas are kind of worthless without the necessary execution in order to get that done, my friend. And I'm wondering if we can start our conversation by you explaining to me, buddy, why you hold that philosophy.
Well, yeah, I mean, nothing matters except for execution. I think a lot of first time or beginner entrepreneurs really protect their ideas, pretty strongly because they think if somebody else has the same idea that they're going to be the ones that runs away with the business. But at the end of the day, if you've started a business before, you know that the idea is probably the least important thing of everything. You have to raise money, you have to get customers, you have to execute on that product or service that you're promising to customers. So I don't put a lot of weight into the idea. I think it's important to have a good one, but you won't have a business if you can't move beyond the idea, if you can't move into execution.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and I'm also curious to get your thoughts on, the conditions to start a business today, because, with the economy sort of flat currently and inflation continuing to fluctuate, what questions do you think business owners should be asking themselves now in order to survive, my friend?
I don't think there's ever been a better time to start a business. I think what AI is doing to entrepreneurship and startups is something that we've never seen before. So I don't think it's ever been easier to start a company with less money, less upfront capital. So I think people saying that now is not the right time to start a business are just looking for an excuse to not to not start a business. I think there's always going to be excuses not to do it. It's not the easiest thing. It's challenging, it's stressful, you lose sleep. But with the advent of AI, it's never been easier. I wish AI existed when I started Shine 8 years ago. But now we're taking advantage of it to the extent that we can. But so I'd push back a little, and I would say it's actually a great time to start a business. Like um, economy, war, everything else aside.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you started your entrepreneurial journey, buddy, when you were 12 with a paper route, my friend. And I know that your started business started a little interestingly when you started your first startup, my friend. You nearly ended up homeless, but you eventually found a business by the time you were 30 that provided you financial freedom, my friend. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about your start in entrepreneurship and why it's so important to build systems in business, my friend.
Well, yeah, I mean, I started super early with the paper route. I mean, I just always had this sense of independence, financial independence. I didn't want to ask my parents for money, I wanted to be able to do my own thing. And so that led me to have a paper route, to be a lifeguard, to be a soccer coach, to work during college. Like I've worked since I was 12. I've always had a job. Um, the level of entrepreneurship has sort of scaled over time. It's gotten more serious. It's gotten bigger. All the numbers, the revenue and the income has gotten more. It's gotten larger over time. But I think I think your business has to have a certain level of scale before you need to start worrying about systems. Like we're just implementing systems into Shine right now, and we're going to do 10 million in revenue this year. So before, like, there's so many things to worry about as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, that I do think certain systems can make your life easier. Basic email, CRM. But I think outside of that, you don't need to stress too much. You really need to be out there talking to customers, making sure that the demand is there. And then I think as revenue grows, that's when you can start worrying about implementing more systems. But I always emphasize the importance of connecting with customers and potential customers and just talking about your product or service and making sure that it's real, that people are willing to pay for it before you start to get too bogged down by what kind of different systems should you implement.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with the premise that relationships are the heartbeat of business. And I know that, as you mentioned, meeting with people and customers face to face as much as you can is important. So I'm curious, Owen, for you, what does it mean to establish relationships and build relationships in business, my friend?
I think it's everything. I think people do business with people that they like. Like especially when we're a solar contractor, so there's a lot of alternatives to Shine. People can use a lot of different solar contracting companies, and we're pretty niche in the multifamily space, and we have a unique way of doing installation. So everyone can't do what we're doing, but I still think the adage holds true of you do business with people that you like and that you connect with. So especially in real estate is still it's an in-person industry. In-person relationships matter, and so I put a lot of weight and importance in personal relationships because our customers own portfolios of properties. So we want to do one installation and then we want to kind of roll out across their portfolio. And if that relationship is not there, then there's a much smaller likelihood that that kind of land and expand strategy is going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me about Sean, my friend. I know that you recently closed a $5 million seed round for it, and I know it's a solar company that's doing a lot of great work, my friend. So tell me about the company and why you're so passionate about it, buddy.
Well, we're a niche solar contractor. We only work for the multifamily space, and we're different from most contractors in that we're interested in installing solar into the tenant meters. So if you think of an apartment building and where the majority of electricity is used, it's not used on the common area meters, which are the meters responsible for the leasing office, the fitness center, the pool, etc. 95% of electricity in an apartment building is used by tenants. So if we can't figure out how to get tenants the benefit of solar, then you're not really having any kind of impact on decarbonizing that property. So the reason that I'm passionate about what I'm doing is I see the multifamily industry as one of the last asset classes that has not really been penetrated by solar. So I think the opportunity is enormous. I think the opportunity lies with the residents, and getting solar to them is the most important part. Um, when we do our installations, we do one small solar system per apartment unit. So if you've a 300 unit apartment building, that's 300 small solar systems. So each tenant is getting their own solar system that benefits them directly. And it's just kind of a novel approach on how to install solar with multifamily. Nobody else is doing it. And so we see the opportunity as kind of untapped. It's just how many deals can we sell and how many projects can we implement, and can we keep this momentum going?
Yeah, absolutely. And and tell me, what do you think is the correlation between being strategic and having discipline in business? I'm curious if you think that there's a correlation between those two things in order to be successful, my friend.
Yeah, I think there's absolutely a correlation. I think early on in my entrepreneurial days, I didn't have the discipline that I had now. I would start like cashing checks, or what's the term? Count my eggs before they hatched.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think discipline matters a lot. I think there's discipline to remember that a deal can fall apart at any minute. Like until the contract's signed and money's in the bank, it's not real. I think the other thing that has taken me a long time to learn related to discipline is to stay focused on your niche. We're in solar and multifamily, and it can be really easy to get distracted by other energy efficiency measures or EV chargers or so many other things that are sort of tangential to solar, but we don't deliberately, because we're the best in the country at installing solar on multifamily. And if we try and expand into a new service too soon, um, then I don't think we will be the best at doing solar for multifamily. So we're just super disciplined in that we're really focused on our core competency for the time being and probably for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you recently pitched over 50 venture capitalists, my friend, and you had no problem getting those, buddy, but you stayed consistent at getting the eventual yes, my friend. So I'm curious to ask you about what it means to have resilience in business. And I know you have sort of an unconventional take about entrepreneurship itself. And you really want to challenge, conventional wisdom when it comes to entrepreneurship, my friend. So what does that all mean to you?
Well, I think when you're an entrepreneur, you have to be optimistic, and you have to be 100% steadfast in the belief that your solution is the right solution. I think if you don't believe that, you will not be an entrepreneur for long, because your just company will not make it. And so when I was pitching all of these climate tech VCs, they all basically said the same thing, which is we want software. We want software to decarbonize buildings. We want software because it's easy to underwrite the SaaS multiple. Um, and I was pretty steadfast that software doesn't decarbonize buildings. And now, in sort of the SaaS apocalypse that we're in because of AI, I think a lot of these software VC backed climate tech companies are imploding because um, the underwriting of SaaS companies today is wildly different than it was, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And so fortunately for me, my intuition was right. That's not always the case. Um, and I just think you need to have that belief in yourself as a founder out there pitching, trying to get initial customers. You really have to believe that you know what you're talking about, even if you don't, and that your solution is the best solution. It's kind of that fake it till you make it mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you're someone that likes to push the envelope of possibilities, my friend. And I know that you've called out some industry experts for some outdated thinking in business. So I'm curious, this is a two-parter for you. What frustrates you most when we talk about making tangible business progress? But well, what also excites you in that same vein, my friend? I'm curious to get your answer there.
I think the thing that frustrates me the most, especially the industry that I'm in, which is, could be considered ESG or sustainability or decarbonization, is this mentality that um, you need to you need to focus on perfection over progress. Like there's so many teams that don't want to implement solutions if they're not absolutely perfect. And so they pass over incremental progress in the meantime. And that drives me absolutely crazy because it's really hard to land on a perfect solution. At the same time, that's exactly what gives me kind of hope and optimism and excitement about what we're doing because occasionally we'll connect with sustainability leaders, asset managers, owners that are aligned in thinking. Like we don't need the perfect solution. We just need a good one. We just need to implement something that makes sense right now, and then we'll worry about the future in the future. But so it's kind of a double edged sword. This perfection over progress mentality because it drives me absolutely insane. But when you align with someone and when you meet someone that has the same mentality as you, it's just how can we do as much work as fast as possible together, and those are the best kind of relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about speed when you have a contrarian business idea, because I know that you believe that sometimes speed beats, perfection. And I'm wondering your message to new entrepreneurs about the speed to market sort of message versus trying to find the most perfect solution, my friend. What are your thoughts there to build on what you just said, my friend?
Well, I think a lot of early entrepreneurs get stuck on their pitch deck or their business plan. They spend months working on a pitch deck or a business plan, and you ask them how many customers they've talked to, and the answer is zero. And you got to get out there. You got to get out there and you got to talk to people. You got to get to yeses fast. You got to get to no's faster because no doesn't mean no, your idea is bad. It just means, your delivery was bad or your value proposition was bad or your pricing model was bad. So when you hear a no, it allows you to tweak your business model or tweak components of it. And I just think that's all you have to that's all you should be focused on in the early days is just getting to customers and hearing no's fast, and hopefully you land a couple yeses here and there, but it's that no's that let you kind of craft your value proposition to a point where hopefully it sticks one day.
Yeah, and Owen, as a professional speaker myself, my speaking coach always tells me that it's important to know your value proposition as a speaker, and I'm sure it's sort of the same mentality in business. So, how important do you think it is for entrepreneurs to know their value proposition, my friend?
So it's the most important thing. If you can't say what you do eloquently in 15 seconds, you don't really know what you're doing. Like so many people trip over themselves and go on and on and on about how cool their product is from a technical solution or the environmental attributes of it. And at the end of the day, like you got to be able to nail what you do in 15 seconds in a way that a third grader would understand. And I think people need to practice that pitch more often.
Yeah, absolutely. No, my friend, you describe yourself as a serial clean tech entrepreneur. And I know that you're on a mission to sort of optimize the net operating income, my friend, and I'm for multifamily real estate, as we discussed earlier. So I'm wondering why you believe, why you describe yourself as a serial clean tech entrepreneur, and how's that big mission that you're on? How's it going, my friend?
Well, an investor once told me that a serial entrepreneur just means that you're a serial failure, which I thought was interesting. It's got a little bit of truth behind it, right? Like I've had success in some startups. But I've had a lot of failure. And for me, I've been on the same. I didn't know this when I started my first company, but I've been on the same journey for over 10 years, and that's to figure out the most scalable path to decarbonizing buildings at scale. And it's taken one form over another. I've tapped into certain grant programs in states that, are not, they don't exist in perpetuity. So when the grant program's over, the business is effectively over. But I've just been tinkering with all kinds of different business models and businesses to accomplish the same thing, which is decarbonizing buildings. And that 10 years of business model pivots has led to Shine, which does seem like it's working and does seem like it's going to decarbonize buildings at scale. And it's just taken a long time.
Yeah, and speaking about time, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this because back in 2025, Reddit did a study that said between 65 and 90% of entrepreneurs lack either the necessary persistence, resources, or market fit for their business to be sustainable over the first year in business, my friend. So what are your thoughts on the study, and what are your thoughts on the importance of business clarity as well, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
I agree with the study. I don't know that I put a lot of weight into business clarity because I think it's hard to have clarity early on. I think you have an idea of something that will work. Um, but you don't know how it's going to work. You don't know the exact form factor it's going to take until you get out there and try it a couple times. So I think persistence is super important. I don't think you'll make it without persistence because I think starting something often takes a lot longer to get adoption than you initially plan it to. And then I think the other kind of mistake that's related that founders run into is they expect to get to revenue faster than it's actually going to take, and as a result, the runway that they give themselves is shorter than it needs to be. So I think a lot of good ideas die because people are too optimistic on how long it's going to take to get to revenue, and then they run out of money before they really give their idea a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And, before we started chatting, Owen, you mentioned to me that you have kids, and I'm curious to ask you, what do you think is the best lesson you've learned in entrepreneurship that's also helped you to be a better parent, my friend? What are your thoughts then?
If it's cool with you, I think I'd take the question a different direction. I think it's what lessons would I have I learned from my kids that I can apply to entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking about this weekend. I'm not a patient person. I'm not a patient person with our customers. I'm not a patient person with my employees. I'm not a patient person with our business model. Like my foot is on the gas pedal 24/7. And it takes some toll on my my wife and my kids because that's kind of how I live my life. But the other day on Saturday, I was teaching I was teaching I was coaching both of my little girls' soccer games, and I don't have the greatest athletes out on the field. I played soccer through college. I'm hyper competitive, and so not having the best player on the field is frustrating, and it teaches you patience. I
Mm.
think patience is something that I could do a better job with. And so I think, coaching my little girls in soccer, making sure that they're that they're staying focused, remembering that it doesn't matter if we win or lose, and just like trying to trying to be a patient coach for my own child who is just doesn't have the athletic ability quite yet. I try and carry that into my professional life so that I'm more patient with kind of everybody in my ecosystem.
Okay, so let me follow up by asking you, what do you think, how do you think you've evolved in having what I call competitive patience in business? Because we all want the sale, but it's important to be strategic. So what do you think it means to have competitive patience in business, my
Good question. I think I'm still learning.
friend?
I don't think I have it yet. I think it's a work in progress.
Well, what do you think you've learned most about yourself that's helped you to become more patient then? Let me try that question that way then.
I think just coming to terms with the fact that I don't have patience, right?
Okay.
I think it's like the 7 stages of grief, or like the
Yeah.
first step is acknowledging, or maybe it's like the 7 stages of addiction. Like the first step is acknowledging you have a problem. I've acknowledged I lack patience. And so I think just being aware of that and acknowledging it is then like the foundation for how to improve.
Hmm.
And so it's really only been like this probably the last 6 months or so where it's really become apparent that I don't have a lot of patience. And so I think it's just something that I'm working on. I'll probably be working on it for a while.
Yeah, and full disclosure. So, oh, and I used to serve as the job developer for the YMCA in my hometown, and I worked in a very small department. It was only about 5 people, and for better for worse, my desk was directly across from my boss's, and when I worked at the YMCA or when I worked in settings where emails come into my inbox, I have a tendency to want to reply right away. But I had answered my boss's email at like 6 o'clock at night, and the next day I went in not thinking anything of it, and then she stopped me before the day started, and she said, you don't always have to answer your emails when they come directly into your inbox because she had sent the email at like 4:25 or something, and I had responded at 6, and she's like, once I close my laptop at like 4:30, I don't open it unless it's an emergency until the next day. So I'm curious about your thoughts on work-life balance and sort of recovering from being a business perfectionist. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
What's work-life balance?
I'm still trying to answer that question for myself. So,
No, I mean I've slowly become more aware of this too. I think for me, I would agree, like close the laptop, but now the problem today is, well, you have all your email on your phone and you're
yeah,
always on your phone. So closing the laptop doesn't help. For me, I just have to put my phone in the room, my office, and just leave it because otherwise I'm constantly checking emails. And so I think I've just learned like family time for me means I don't have my phone. I'll miss calls, I'll miss texts, I won't respond to emails. It is what it is. Otherwise, you miss life. And I think that's ultimately what you're going to probably regret down the road.
yeah, absolutely. Ora, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this study from the University of North South Wales that said that it indicated that 87% of founders or entrepreneurs at some point during their business journey, they suffer from either anxiety, depression, or burnout due to always thinking they have to adopt what's known as the hustle culture, my friend. And I'm curious to know not only what you think of the study, but how we can provide, entrepreneurs the grace to sort of slow down and really contemplate the seeds that they've already planted before they move on to something else. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
I think if you don't want to hustle, if you don't want to be on 24/7, don't take outside investment. that easy, right? If it's your money, if you're bootstrapped, I think you can operate at whatever schedule you see fit. I think the second you take outside investment,
Mm-hmm.
there's a different expectation, and it's sort of deserved. Like someone's trusted you with their money to turn it into more money. It's going to be hard to do that if you have kind of like a laissez-faire attitude. That doesn't mean you need to be working around the clock, but I
Mm-hmm.
think the expectation is that you're working harder and more often than the average person.
Fair enough. I'm also curious to get your thoughts on the whole idea of having entrepreneurial ambition and going after what you want. So, what do you think it means to have healthy ambition as an entrepreneur, my friend?
I've been thinking about this recently. I think it's something you're born with or you're not. And I don't know that that's a good answer that's going to make people happy, but I've started to, because for me, like, I get very frustrated when I hear something that doesn't make any sense. When somebody tells me something that doesn't make any sense, it gives me this, like, I have this bad reaction to it. Like, someone needs to fix it. Someone should improve it. Someone should start a business to do something. But not everybody has that attitude in life. And so I think entrepreneurial ambition, I think it's something that you're born with. I don't know that you can teach it,
Mm-hmm.
because I
Well,
just think there's so many intangibles that you
yeah.
need to start a business and run a business, that, like, if you don't have that desire within to improve something or to do something new, I don't think you're going to make it.
Yeah, and to that point, I was going to ask you about entrepreneurial curiosity and how it's linked to thinking with an entrepreneurial mindset. So, how do you think curiosity and entrepreneurship, if you're an entrepreneur, how do you think curiosity can be a competitive advantage?
Well, I think it's the most important thing. I think I would say that curiosity and stubbornness are the most important characteristics an entrepreneur has, because I think the stubbornness is kind of what helps you maintain that belief that you're right, your product or service will work. It helps you maintain that optimism and curiosity. Like, business models are constantly evolving. Your primary business model will evolve. You'll have kind of secondary products or services that you launch, and if you lose that curiosity or you don't have it, you're going to miss a ton of opportunity. So I think, yeah, I think it's critical to being successful.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
outside of entrepreneurship too, right? If
Yeah.
you're a W-2 employee, like, just in life in general, I think if you lose curiosity and you stop learning throughout your life, I think you become like a very boring person.
Well, that's interesting you say that because there's a sign in my office that says the day that you stop learning is the day that you die, my friend. Because I believe
Yeah.
that no matter how many degrees you have on a wall or how many years you went to school, you can always learn something from somebody else, right?
Yeah.
And to that point, for entrepreneurs specifically, um, I wanted to ask you about the importance of embracing delegation because, as an entrepreneur, when you can learn to run a business that doesn't always need your sort of eyes on it 24/7, and, sometimes those businesses flourish more than a business that you have to micromanage. So tell me about the importance of entrepreneurial delegation and how important that is to scaling a business, my friend. What are your thoughts there?
Oh, again, it's critical. I think the founder becomes a bottleneck pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And so if you can't learn to delegate, I don't think it doesn't mean that you won't be successful, but it does mean that you won't scale.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't scale beyond your own constraints. And so I think learning how to delegate, even though it's really hard. I mean, when you start something, like, it's your baby and it's hard to hand over control of certain aspects, but um, your baby's never going to grow up if you can't do that.
I've got two questions left for you. The first of those two questions is this, buddy. You know, I was born with cerebral palsy, and I found out, Owen, at the age of 9, that I would never be able to walk without assistance because of the severity of my cerebral palsy. Now, I graduated college with a sports journalism degree, and when I graduated college, I went on 10 consecutive job interviews, buddy, and I was rejected 10 consecutive times, not because I wasn't qualified, but because of my disability. So I became a speaker and an entrepreneur out of necessity because no one would hire me in the mainstream job market, my friend. And ironically, I get paid now to regurgitate those stories about how I turned failure into success. So I'm curious to ask you about uh, individuals with disabilities and the opportunities they have for prosperity if they enter entrepreneurship. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Well, it's a good question. I don't really know. I don't, I don't have a, like, I just don't know a lot of people with disabilities. I think that there's opportunity. I do think that the chips are probably stacked against them. I think it's harder. However, there's probably also like tax credits and certain things that you can get as a disabled owned business if or I don't know what the terminology is, but I mean, I don't know. I don't have a lot of experience with that side of things. I think entrepreneurship is hard enough as it is. I think you throw a disability on top of that, it's going to be even harder. But I also feel like there may be some unique opportunities for founders with disabilities to get certain opportunities that non-disabled founders may be able to get. But I think overall, it's probably a lot harder.
Yeah, so let me follow up with one question before I end our time together. I'm curious then to ask you about what do you think it means to be a business innovator and having innovation in your business thinking? What do you think that means to you?
Um, I don't I don't see how you're an entrepreneur if you're not innovating on some level.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you necessarily need to think of a new product or service, but even like types of improvements to me are innovations. You're improving quality or pricing or speed. So I think innovation is the foundation of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, my friend, my final question for you is about life and legacy, because you know I believe that we're all put on Earth to sort of point our life compass in the direction we want it to go, and it's incumbent upon all of us to sort of put our fingerprints of difference into the sand, my friend. So when it's all said and done for you, my friend, how do you want your fingerprints of difference, your legacy to be defined from a personal or professional standpoint? What are your thoughts there?
I want people to remember me as the guy that figured out how to put solar on multifamily.
Simple enough, my friend. And yeah, so how do you think that's going? Where do you see the challenges and the bottlenecks, and where do you see the opportunity moving forward? What are your thoughts, buddy?
I mean, things are going great. Our company is exploding. We're getting in the door with just the largest apartment owners in the country. We have a couple like unique components of our business model that the losing the tax credit with solar because of the big beautiful bill is not really going to impact us the same way it does like traditional residential solar installers or commercial installers. So I'm really optimistic and bullish on the future. Um, I think for me, it's just a question of like how big can we get and how quickly.
And finally, tell me if people want to get connected with you, buddy. What's the best way they can do that, bud?
Yeah, I think just finding me on LinkedIn, Owen Barrett on LinkedIn. It's the only social media platform that I'm on.
Fabulous. Well, my friend, I really enjoyed our conversation about business engagement and opportunity, my friend, both in the solar space and entrepreneurship overall. I think you're doing great work, my friend, and it was an honor to engage in conversation with you, and I want to thank you for being here. It's most appreciated, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to meet you.